We're getting into some declassified gossip today.
Juicy.
Okay. Since we are church girls ourselves, this Marvin Sapp story is just too interesting to pass up. And I thought it could be fun to talk about what church was like for us.
I just feel like there's this weird expectation that I'm supposed to go from like virginal pure to know-it-all sex freak, have all the babies. And it's just like interesting to deal with the internalized conflict there.
And that's interesting because on another episode of We're So Different, I was the opposite. I wasn't at church thinking like, oh no, my body's a temple. I had boyfriends at church. And I was in like second grade. I don't know. Would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now.
Welcome back to Sistas Declassified, where we're like sisters who started a podcast instead of going to Bible study.
Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to get your weekly dose of declassified moments.
Yay. So instead of getting into our declassified moment for today, we're getting into some declassified gossip today.
Juicy.
Okay. Not so juicy, but since we are church girls ourselves, or grew up as church girls, this Marvin Sapp story is just too interesting to pass up. Because,
well, I was just going to say, if you haven't heard about it or haven't seen it yet, essentially it was time to do the offering, and he decided everybody was going to stay and give an offering. We'll insert a clip or something real quick so y'all can just kind of hear it in his words, but just know the doors were locked.
There's 1,000 of you. I said close them doors. Ushers, close the doors. Close the doors. Close the doors. It's 1,000 that's watching online. This is a small seed. If I get 1,000 online to give this, if I get 1,000 in the sanctuary to give this, that's $40,000 tonight.
And he did say it wasn't a typical church service. It was some sort of convention. He responded or whatever.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that.
And it was basically ultimately asking people for $20 based on the amount of people that were watching it live online or there in person.
Which isn't a crazy amount of money for most people.
Right. But it was the dramatics of it all.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Do not close and lock the doors and give me no choice about what I do with my money.
Yeah, I think when we think about tithes and offering, it's in the word offering, right? You generally want to be giving with love, with an open heart, and that just felt very like demanding, like forceful.
Very forceful. And you don't know what type of time these people are on or what's in their pocket, so you just made everybody uncomfortable. Money is like such an uncomfortable topic for people. And I know it's like, well, if you give it to God, you'll be fine, so there should be no discomfort. But also, the reality is there's still discomfort sometimes.
Right, and everybody's relationship with God is different, and so it could just be very uncomfortable. And in today's economy, the way things are going in this country, people are trying to hold on to every coin they have.
And who knows what else they probably paid or did at this convention.
Right. So, like, did they pay to go to the convention? Right. It's like, I did offer. My ticket was however much money it was. What y'all do with that is what y'all do with that.
Right. Exactly. But it just kind of made me think about church in general, and I thought it could be fun to talk about, like, what church was like for us and what it's like to be a kid who grew up in church navigating this world now, because it's very different than when we were born. Like, a lot of things were more taboo.
Yep, definitely. We live in a much more, at least the media would have us believe we live in a much more free world, I think. And social media allows us to see, I guess I'll say it, quote unquote, alternative lifestyles, right? And so we just have a broader sense of how other people are living in the world. People who believe in God and people who don't.
Or people who believe in God in a different way than we do. For us, just some background, we grew up Baptist, like going to Baptist church on Sundays and Wednesdays and Thursdays sometimes for choir
rehearsal.
And we went to Catholic school. So we were basically at church all the time unless we were at sports, or like, you know, family occasions and stuff. But we had an interesting dynamic because we went to a black church, and for a little while we went to a black Catholic school, but then we switched to an all-white school basically, and that was kind of a culture shock.
And you were there for much longer than I was.
Yeah, I went there for 5 years, so that was interesting. Slow songs, Ave Maria's, playing the bells.
Yeah, just a much different experience than what we were getting on Sundays with the rhythm and blues and the yelling and the praise worship,
praise dance, all kinds of stuff, screaming, you know, catching the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, they were used to people be woo falling out,
breaking the pew. But anyway, I think it was a nice experience. I think to give us different perspectives, but I think it also impacted how I see God now, because I saw different ways people can access God. It made me be curious around like other religions as well. And so I think that's what is kind of interesting and hard for people in this day and age, because you have access to so much information, like you're saying, that like deciding what is best for you and the way in which you want to access God can be really hard. And I think for me, over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I've been trying to figure out what God means to me and how to access him on my own. And I think situations like Marvin Sapp are the reason for that. Because I wouldn't say I grew up in a church that was that extreme, like shut the doors.
Right.
But
there are moments. I would say because there's like this more like familial type of relationship that the pastor we grew up with had with our congregation. There were just things that were like less uptight than the Catholic churches that we attended. And so there'd be a little more keeping it real with how they felt about the Lord and what that meant for you as a part of the church. And so sometimes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, and like past life history. So that was always fairly transparent. Right. Like that we go through things and then we lean on God. And then once we know better, we do better. Kind of stuff. So it was accountable, and I can definitely own that. But I also feel like all of these other religions exist, and they do access God. But then we're telling them that after they die, they're damned to hell.
Because the way that they're doing it is wrong. Yeah. I definitely felt like I was going to hell a lot. And there'd be times where I'd be like, oh, get your mind back on the subject, because I'd be thinking about other things in the world and then feel like I'm going to go to hell. And I think it was very interesting taking world religions in high school, specifically at our Catholic school, to learn about other religions and how there's like a lot of similarities in like the morality of it all. A lot of the teachings are the same in terms of like how you treat your neighbor, how you treat other people. But then to your point, to hear like, yeah, but them Catholics, yeah, but those Buddhists, the Muslims,
they pray to Mary. Why would they pray to Mary? They talk to the saints. Why would they talk to the saints? Like, you know, there's just all these little things saying why ours is the best and like why it's the only way. And I just don't agree with that or subscribe to that, because I do genuinely think that we as people can access God in the way that fits us, and that there's commandments that we follow to be a good person, and that is ultimately what God is wanting us to do.
Right. And we can kind of clearly see the through line in a general sense. I would say some religions are more strict than others. And again, it just depends on the church you attend, how strictly they believe or enforce certain things. Because I think of like the Nation of Islam, for example, would probably feel a little more strict than like the Baptist church we grew up in. More
kind of Scientology or like.
Yeah. Well, I don't know nothing about no Scientology other than Tom Cruise, but...
That's really... Oh, you gotta watch the Scientology documentary.
Yeah, I think we are taught that, or at least we were taught that the Lord gives us free will. And so when there are all of these very, very strict rules to follow in certain religions, it seems a little contradictory. Like, I guess you're supposed to choose the regimented life because that means you are a follower, believer. But if it also doesn't feel right, then it can leave you with some internal struggle. And it doesn't mean like, I don't mean doesn't feel right like the Lord tells you not to kill, and you're like, but I want to murder.
Right.
I mean, like, there's nuance, there's a middle ground, like, it's a spectrum of morality, I guess you could say. And I think in us being able to attend Catholic Church and Baptist Church, with them being so similar, there were also very clear, like, distinctions between the two. And so it allowed you to really, like, well, both of us, I guess, kind of ask questions and broaden our horizons a little bit more. It's like, well, if y'all say y'all worshiping the same God, how did we get to such different conclusions on how we do that and what that looks like?
And also, like, the history of how and why we believe
we as Black people
to be Baptists. Right, yeah. And that those other belief systems that personify God in multiple different ways is like idolatry, or that's something that's bad. When really, I think they're just that's their creation story. And so, and it was made before yours. Like, so why is that bad? I don't know.
Yeah, I think what I struggle with being a Black American, knowing the history of enslavement that our people went through, I think I struggle with the connection between how the Bible was used to enslave our forefathers, our ancestors. And so to know that we're practicing the same religion, or a version of the same religion that was used to justify our enslavement and treatment of us as, like, not people, is a little bit unsettling. And the more I learned about history and the more I learned about how it was manipulated to kind of make white people feel good about it, for lack of better words, it does become hard to process that, like, this is for me, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it was made for me all the time.
Yeah.
I think something else that comes up for me just in this conversation around, like, I hate to use the word indoctrination, but, like, that's kind of what it is, right? Like, I think we use indoctrination as a negative, but I think it could also just be a thing, right? Like, that's true. We're indoctrinated into American culture. We're indoctrinated into church, whatever. We're indoctrinated into things we join, systems we join, right? Social groups. It's part of human life. I think specifically about, like, some of the things that come to my mind that still are a part of the indoctrination that I have to separate myself from. And, like, the one that feels, like, most salient to me is just around being raised as a young woman who was supposed to treat her body as a temple. There were certain things I should and should not allow. Boys, no touchy the body, right? And then I think it was interesting getting engaged and then getting married and having to, like, I don't know, there's almost like this flip or switch that is expected of you to go from, like, being this virginal, pure young woman, and now you're married, and it's like, when are the babies coming? It's like, wait a minute, y'all didn't want to talk to me about sex ever, or, like, sex was a taboo topic. It's not something I'm supposed to be interested in. I've been married for 5 minutes, and now y'all want to know about my sex life.
You say you supposed to bust it wide up?
Right. Now I'm supposed to be the freak of the week, and I just find that to be very interesting. I don't know, because I think, like, I could just hear Mom in the back of my mind. Your body is a temple. Your body is a temple. And, like, do I disagree with that? Not necessarily. Do I think there are ages and stages in life where it might be appropriate for you to explore your sexuality, or more appropriate than others? Sure. Like, when you're 12, yes, please, your body is a temple. 16, 17, 18, older, hey, you know, urges, life, explore. That's just my personal...
That's what the Judy Blume book was for.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Oh, yeah, is that what it is?
I don't know if it was that one, but...
No, I think that's it.
Love some Judy Blume. But I just think... I don't know. I just feel like there's this weird expectation that I'm supposed to go from, like, virginal pure to know-it-all sex freak, have all the babies. And it's just, like, interesting to deal with the internalized conflict there. And maybe a little bit annoying also, because I just don't think you should ask people when they're going to have kids. I think there are many reasons why people don't and choose not to have kids. Sometimes it's by choice. Sometimes it's not their choice. And so I just feel like it's a very, like, personal and sensitive topic. But at the end of the day, you're asking about penis and vagina. And, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's very personal. and it's supposed to be personal in this religious space, and then all of a sudden everybody want to know about it. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just real fascinating to me how as a society we feel comfortable asking married people or even grown people about it, versus like having more open conversations with young people about like how their bodies are changing or what their desires might be. I think generally speaking in our home, it wasn't like the most taboo topic, but I can't say that I felt comfortable bringing things either, just because it felt like
it wasn't brought to us.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily brought to us. I think we were talked about like our body changes, having a period, things like that. I think were to the forefront. So knowing that your period coming means you can have a baby if you do X, Y, Z. Being around folks who also experienced teen pregnancy, I think just like scarred me a little bit. So it kept me real safe. But just that flip into adulthood is just very fascinating. College was an interesting time for me, and that's all I'll say.
Well, I was going to say, I have two thoughts that are happening at once. I want to first know, what am I trying to say? I want to know how you overcame being a church girl and then switching or flipping the switch.
I think in having conversations with friends who were more experienced and lived a different life and didn't grow up necessarily with the same sort of restrictions, for lack of a better word, imposed on them. Like most of my, obviously a lot of our school friends were also in church, but most of my teammates in gymnastics were not. And so it was just interesting to hear their perspectives on things or what their parents were talking to them about or what they were talking about with their friends. And so I think having a group of people I could like ask questions to who were not I'm not saying they was out there, whoring it up, but they were all pretty innocent as well, to be honest, but their perspective on it was much different than mine. Mine was rooted in like, sin, you're going to hell. Theirs was just like, I don't have time for that, or I'm not interested in that yet, or I am, and like I have a boyfriend who I really love, or whatever. Like, so it was just interesting to hear their experience. But I think, like I said, going to college, I think broadened my horizons even more into how different people live their sexual lives. And then I realized like nothing happened to them, like at least in this life, right? We'll see how it goes in the afterlife, if you believe in that. But I think I just realized like at the end of the day, it's about making responsible choices. And as long as I could make responsible choices, I could feel safe in myself. And so I think that's kind of how that transition took place.
Yeah. And that's interesting because on another episode of We're So Different, I was very, I was the opposite. I wasn't at church thinking like, oh no, my body's a temple. I had boyfriends at church. And I was in like second grade.
That's that second child. She just
explores the world.
Explores the world.
I was kissing them.
Lord.
I was pretty. Sorry, Mom and Dad, if you're watching. I was busy when I was little.
I didn't have my first kiss till I was 15.
I had my first kiss. Yep. I don't know how to say it on the camera. But none of that stuff really counts because I will say by the time that I got to high school and puberty hit, I became insecure. So then it was like, nope, nobody touched me. And nobody look at me. I'm scared. So it was a very different ball game by then. But it was very interesting while I was growing up. So I didn't think about, like, I wasn't worried about when your body's a temple that much. When I heard it, it was more of like eye roll. It wasn't something that really, like,
I was taking notes. Stuck
in my head. But now as an adult, I do feel that way. So I think I just wasn't ready for that. When the conversation came to me.
Like it didn't mean anything to you.
It didn't mean a thing. But then once I got a little bit older and I think maybe had more respect for myself and maybe more maturity and understanding of like what that means, then it was like, no, I have boundaries. My body's a temple. Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, so that was kind of a switch that was kind of flipped for me. But I will just say, I guess, if we start leading towards wrapping this up, is that church is what you make it.
Right, we did get off. Sorry, Marvin.
Church is what you make it. And I guess if you align with Marvin's
locking the doors
and locking the door, then by all means, go for it. But I will say, I just think these leaders of these big mega churches have lost the plot and are very performative and leading us in a direction that we don't need to go sometimes. I won't say who, but there's lots of them.
Girl, name them. Let us know who we should be, just looking at more deeply. Because I don't pay attention to none of these people, to be honest with you.
It's okay.
What was the one that spit in a man's face?
Why are you doing this? Mike Todd. You know who it was.
Maybe I did.
And that started a whole family argument just the other day, talking about whether he was worth listening to or not. And while I could say fine, he does spark interest in God that maybe other people don't.
He speaks in a relatable way, right, to a certain group of people. Mm-hmm. Your face is saying a lot.
And yeah, he was onto something at one point.
Right, I remember hearing his name quite often, and then that thing happened.
It was before that. Oh. It was before the spit in the face. He had done something else before that. I can't remember, but I was just like,
I mean, players mess up too. You know what I'm saying? They're people at the end of the day. They're not perfect. But
you had to run that by somebody. Your brother knew, and he allowed it. But
that was his brother?
Yes.
That's weird. Or I don't know what's weirder. The whole thing is weird.
So yeah, I just think some of that stuff and the loss of understanding that like we're supposed to help each other. I think
build community with one another.
Yeah,
and that's the main goal.
Yeah, and I will say obviously I do think that churches are still doing that. Mm-hmm. But I just think making it the main purpose rather than uplifting these big pastors to make them these mega leaders who get all this money and clout. Like, what is your community members gaining from that besides your word? If you could go out and buy Versace and Fendi and 3 houses and all that stuff and travel all the time, but your church members are struggling to buy groceries, I think that says a lot.
I would agree with that. It makes you wonder, like, to the earlier point around tithes and offering, like, where is the money going? Mm-hmm. And if people have to ask that question, then you're not being clear enough with where the money is going. Like, it should be kind of obvious.
Right, and I think my understanding of the Bible is that, like, if we are God and we are of God and we're tithing to God, then that money should be going back into the church if we are acting as godly people. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. And the church includes the body. The church includes the congregation, the members.
Not just the building.
Right.
And the people who, I guess, help to keep the church running. Mm-hmm.
And I'll say one thing I do appreciate about the church we grew up in, there are very clear programs that the money was going to help folks in the community. I'm thinking of like the recovery program as being one of those where folks could get back on their feet and learn about the Lord while also, getting off the stuff they was on.
And getting the homes in the neighborhood and people could rent out or use if they needed somewhere to live.
Yeah. So I think we were lucky to have examples of like what it looks like for a church to give back to the community.
A free block party every summer with rides
and food and prizes and that stuff was fun.
It was fun. It's not built the same these days, but it was definitely.
Many events are hard in this day and age.
But yes, definitely blessed to have grown up in that time.
I'll say the other thing that I appreciate just about our church community in particular was that like we really did feel like we have people who felt like family. Like there are people.
Our auntie.
Yeah, everybody's an auntie. I still got church cousins. Like I refer to people like as people I grew up with, but I'm like, no, that's my church cousin. And we call each other cousin, and it's not weird. Like that's family. We spent time in each other's houses.
My auntie, that's a AKA, and she's not my auntie, but I'm gonna tell everybody she's my auntie, and nobody's gonna question it. And when she sees me, I'm her niece, and that's just it.
Right. And it's just because we grew up going to church, in the church, and she's right there in the pew, telling us to hush.
Right. Sit down. Be quiet.
Yeah.
And Mom's gonna get you.
So I would say we have like a solid group of folks that we would consider our church cousins who honestly, like if they needed something and called me, I got you, cousin. And I believe the same would be true for us as well. So I do appreciate the community that we received in going to church and growing up with other Black folks who we get to call our cousins.
Yeah. And I guess in wrapping us up today, ready for our sister circle question. I just think maybe we could ask, what has the impact of like church and religion been on your life? Is it something that you grew up with, or is it something maybe that you're coming into now, or is it something that you just don't touch? Like, I'm good on that. Let us know. Where do you fall?
Thank you guys so much for watching. We look forward to hearing about you and your relationship with God, or lack thereof, in the comments. So please let us know how you're feeling, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.